really look at a major fact between people who wanted affordable housing and the people who didn't want anything except maximizing profit, also known as politicians. Anyway, so if any of you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask, interrupt me, don't listen. I wouldn't listen, except I'm talking, so I can't not listen, but it's up to you. So I'm going to set the scene. So we're going to go back to the beginning of the Second World War. So 1939, Canada's just come out of a 10-year depression, and we're thrown into this maximum war effort on the Canadian war front. So not only is Canada providing soldiers and military, they're also providing military equipment, farm, food, not only for the Canadian forces, but for a lot of the British. So there's this utter mobilization of all of Canadian society to fight the war effort. So all of a sudden, you've gone from a very dormant economic situation to full employment, full production. This creates a massive housing shortage in Montreal, in part because over the past 10 years, there hadn't been any construction, or very little construction, relatively speaking, because of the Depression. So not only do you have an inherent shortage, you have increased problems because you have a lot of people moving into the cities to work, because all of a sudden there are these industries that require workers, and then there are businesses, ancillary businesses, that require people to work as well. So you have this double whammy. And of course, through the prism of war, everything that slows down the war effort becomes a almost like psychic problem for the country and for the war effort. So the federal government is being drawn very unwillingly out of its laissez-faire capitalist attitude into housing, but in a very tepid and temporary way. So by the early 1940s, the federal government starts something called wartime housing limited. And that is to build what was to be temporary housing for workers. If you're ever up in Ville-Saint-Laurent, where the big Bombardier plant is, adjacent to that is a really interesting area with streets named after European universities. So there's a Sorbonne Street and a Cambridge Street. Probably tells you something about how bureaucrats like to name things and their identification. But these have these small wooden houses, which are usually like a 2-bedroom, single floor. Originally, they were on cedar posts. So these were built by this Crown Corporation. The idea being is that they're going to provide housing, but it's not going to be temporary housing. Federal government at all costs does not want to become permanent landlords to any of these people. So they're doing this. They're saying we're meeting this temporary need around, I think it's the Monk metro station. There's blocks of it there. There's some up in Hunsick, and you see them across the country. So there are these houses that they're building. They're also creating rent controls. There's a housing registry. There are all these things to try and maximize the accessibility of housing. So there's still a problem, and the problem's growing worse. And the problem gets really bad toward the end of the war, and right at the end of the war, because you have demobilizations of hundreds of thousands of people who served in the military who are coming back to Canada. So you have two problems. You have the problem of these guys who are back and they need housing, they start families, they want housing, and they're veterans. So not only is a claim for everyone deserves decent accommodations, but we're veterans, we put our ass on the line for your country, you're coming back, we expect something. Now the federal government knows this is a problem, knows it's a political problem, because they have seen what happened in England with the Labour government coming in. After the First World War, there was massive bitterness of veterans who came back, and they said they deserve homes for heroes. That was the term the government used, homes for heroes. There were no homes, there was a lot of resentment, and Mackenzie King, the Canadian Prime Minister, is the Liberals looking at the CCF, which is now the NDP, growing in popularity. So they know they can't just back out like they want to and just say, you're on your own, housing a provincial responsibility, you do it. But they also don't want to become into housing, but they're being dragged in. So Wartime Housing Limited, which is supposed to be wartime worker temporary housing, becomes a bigger program giving post-war housing to veterans. So they're building houses, they have foundations now, they're not on cedar posts. They're doing that. This is fine, they have emergency shelters they're setting up. The big issue is affordable, decent housing. The private market, when it does build, is not building anything that's affordable for most people. So they said this is a big problem. The federal government wants to just give money to builders and just get out of it. But there's a problem because they're not building higher density, affordable housing. So the federal government, 1944 National Housing Act, comes up with a solution. We don't want to do it, but we want someone else to do it, to become landlords. And they help fund something which is an amalgam of insurance companies called Housing Enterprises of Canada Limited. Now this model, insurance companies creating limited dividends, so you limit the profit, to build housing for people, is not a new idea in 1946. Metropolitan Life in the US, huge insurance company, builds this, if you're ever in New York and Manhattan, in the Lower East Side, or not quite the Lower East Side, there's something called Stuyvesant Town, Stuyvesant Village. There's a big development, towers in a park kind of idea. It's there, and that's an example of that. So the federal government is good. Okay, we can make sure people get housing. We're off the hook. So Housing Enterprises of Canada Limited is formed, and their big showpiece project is Benny Farm. So Benny Farm's interesting. It's a strip of land bought in the early 19th century by a guy named Walter Benny, and the family owns it, inherits it. So in the 20th century, 1920s, 30s, as this area develops, you have houses like this. This is like NDG standard. NDG was supposed to be a very middle class area. So they wanted it to have brick front, well clad, certain status, because that's what the people who founded the town wanted, that's what the city wanted. So you had development that came up to here. Then you had, going by about Walkley, west towards Loyola and then towards Montreal West, you have development. But you had this huge tract of land which was empty. So people talk about going on the old streetcar that went along Sherbrooke, the number 3, and they see farms on either side, like house, then this stretch of farm. Federal government in 1944 buys the land from the family. And their idea is they were going to set up a veterans hospital. So it turns out they don't need the veterans hospital, but they got the land, and now they've got Housing Enterprises of Canada offering it. So they sell the land to this company with the understanding that they'll build this housing on it. Okay, so Housing Enterprises of Canada Limited comes up with an idea, very much again this European idea of housing. So this big tract of land, so instead of having high density building along here, or apartment building or something, they have this idea, it's very much what Corbusier, you know, as a certain theorist. You're going to have a lot of green space. You're going to have buildings, but they're going to be serpentine. And of the lot coverage, you're only going to have about 17% of the lot is going to be buildings. The rest is going to be green space. It's going to be parks, gardens, and landscape. The idea is you'll have light, you'll have air. There's very much the idea of health as understood. You know, this will be a healthy environment. Kids can play here. It'll be wonderful. I've got a map here from 1948 of what the project, what it looked like. I'll pass it around because it also has a couple of pictures. It's actually my master's thesis. If you want to read it, I can send you a link, or you can put it on the website, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it's already on the History Society website.
It's on the History Society. There's pictures of the buildings. The buildings themselves, 3 stories, and there are 4 or 5 apartment units. Here, I'll pass that around. And the idea is that they're good for small families, so 2 or 3 bedrooms, and they're going about 50% under market rate for new building construction. So this is great. Everything's looking good, except for one thing. This is a threat to the status quo political power in Montreal, which is dominated by landlords. So Montreal had this really interesting, rather arcane structure of voting, and the city council is dominated by people who own land. 90% of Montrealers are renters. 10% are landowners. So you have a lot of people who own a lot of land, including the most powerful municipal politician, who's not the mayor. The mayor was a figurehead position. It's the chairman of the executive committee, a guy named J.O. Aslan, who is actually an NDG council representative, but who lives in Westmount, who owns property all over the place. And so his public demeanor through all of this crisis, tell me if it doesn't sound familiar to you, is crying crocodile tears for the poor people who are coming back from the war and they have no place to stay. and he's visiting people and going, oh, he writes this thing, we brought clothes to this poor family because they were suffering. So he's doing all this, and the federal government's not helping, and behind the scenes completely stonewalling any effort that is not led and dominated by private industry or will threaten rents. And it's actually quite explicit sometimes, saying anything that'll take away money out of our pockets we're against, because we went through the Depression, we really suffered, and as landlords now we're going to maximize our profit. So complete parasitical. I'm sorry, I'm being very political. I take that back, but I'm amongst friends, I think. All right, so April 1946, plans are unveiled. People are excited. Even though nothing's even been approved, Housing Enterprise of Canada is getting all kinds of requests for people to live here. Needs a zoning change. This whole area is zoned single-family housing, or at least semi-detached housing. So here's where we get into the tricky part. So, no-brainer, right? Housing shortage, housing, affordable housing, change the zoning. You shouldn't even think about it. No. So, the city, dominated by landlords, starts to do this whole stalling process. They're not going to bring it to a vote because they need to study it. Then they're not going to bring it to a vote because there's this mysterious counteroffer for the land. Sounds like the emperor's going to think of it. And then they got to look at that too. So we can vote on it. And then it's going to be, oh no, it's going to be a slum. People don't want this. I can't compete with the fighting dog. I can't compete. It's kind of like, it's appropriate. It's a dog fight then, it's a dog fight now. All right. Anyway, so they're dragging their heels. There's a petition that started of people who supposedly are against this. Got it. Thank you. And but then there's a counter fight led by people like the NDG Community Council, not Helen personally. Yeah.
I'm very peaceful.
Yeah, the Royal Canadian Legion and the
We have 5 more.
5 more minutes. I'll shut up right now. Okay, and then other groups in Montreal Monitor. So they're fighting, and eventually it goes to a vote, and it beats City Council because it's a zoning change. You need a 2/3 majority by 1 vote. So June 1946, by 1 vote, County Enterprise gets the right to build this, and here we go. And I'll shut up.
No, Chris.
Yeah.
You've got to segue. If I'm going to tell the Benny Farm story,
Yeah.
you've got to wrap up.
Oh, I did.
Oh, is that done?
I did wrap up. So it gets built, and here we are, and everyone's happy ever after.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
No,
you.
Chris,
Thank you.
don't go away.
Oh.
I have a question. So, in other words, the original Benny Farm was built for low income.
Not low
Returning.
income, but it was returning vets were given priority, and it was affordable housing.
And it was social housing.
Well, what happened was it was through this company,
Yeah.
but the company said we can't afford to do this, so the federal government very reluctantly became the owners and operators of Benny Farm.
And it was kind of social housing.
It was
low
social.
income.
It was social housing,
Yeah.
geared to income, affordable housing, yeah.
Good. 'Cause
Yeah.
some of the veterans were buying houses just up here that were being built.
Yeah.
In the private sector.
Yeah, and then
And these were the
yeah.
poor veterans.
Could be, yeah.
Which is a good segue.
All right, cool.
So, it's 1945, it's 1946, it's 1947. It's the baby boom. Suddenly, all these houses are full of very energetic soldiers and their new wives, and they start having babies. And the nickname is Bunny Farm. Okay, the population explosion that happens at Bunny Farm we need grade schools, right? Yeah, we need shopping. The whole economy, in a way, emerges from the baby boom that happens right here in this space right here. Okay. Those veterans are getting old. It's now 1990. They're starting to show age. The buildings I'm talking about.
And the veterans.
And the veterans. And so we start wondering, well, what's going to happen? What we see right here around us is actually new construction that was built for the people who used to live in Benny Farm, the old units you see a picture of. This is the new units for them as they are aging. This is for them. Now, at the time when that discussion was happening, there was a big debate. The federal government did a nasty thing. They said you can only have these brand new units before the if we can tear down all the old stuff and sell it off to the private sector to make the money to pay for this stuff. Their there's the divide and conquer. NDG went into a kind of a war. Well, I'm gonna call it a war. And for about 10 years, there were many consultations, there was lots of local politics, there were lots of sides and everything. It's a great story. There's an excellent website which has all of the details, and both sides are portrayed in there. So the end result was, the NDG Community Council has had a very lasting effect, and it created a round table which tried to bring all of the stakeholders around the table to find out to try and find a way forward. This is oh my goodness, what year is this? 1999. 1998, 99. Okay, 40 or 50, all mom and pop organizations. The YMCA is there, the Senior Citizens Council is there, NDG Count. The president of the NDG Community Council is the president of the round table. All right, we've got all the stakeholders. We're gonna figure our way through this together. We're not gonna fight. It was complicated, continued to be complicated. I'm gonna cut through all the nonsense. I took minutes every meeting, and I still have them. One day I'm gonna put them on the Wikipedia. It's a fantastically detailed archive. I'm just a little afraid. I want all the people to be dead before I put it on. I was a little kid, you know, doing the notes. The punchline is, most of the site was saved. As you know, these were built. Win-win. Some of it was privatized. We lost a piece of it to a beautiful new CLSC and library. It was what you call that? Solomon's justice, I think you might call it. And at the time when the final plan was announced, there was a consultant who was named in a big tent, a temporary tent that was built over here. And he was named as the only consultant who could have negotiated the peace agreement that was finally done. His name is Jacques Benard. Yeah. We shouldn't forget Jacques Benard. That's all I'm gonna say. I think we can. Anybody got any questions? Who doesn't know the story of Benny Farm? Put up your hands. You don't know. This is the first time you're hearing it. Put up your hands. I want to see you. Okay, all those people who know the Benny Farm story or bits of it, put up your hands. I want to see you guys. Oh wow. Okay. Well, you guys who don't know much of the story, that was a very truncated version. You got to go and find that website and do a little reading. It's a great story, and one day you'll be able to read all the minutes on Wikipedia. I think that's it.
Thank you.